Welcome to Professor Ortlieb's Bluebook podcast, a series of podcasts designed to teach 1Ls the basics of legal citation. In this episode, we will look at citation forms for federal statutes. This episode has a companion piece, Citation of State Statutes. Make sure you review both lessons before trying to tackle your statutory citation homework. A cite to a federal statute or law contains 4 or maybe 5 components. The first component is the official name of the act. Some acts or laws are best known by the name, like the Voting Rights Act or maybe the Affordable Care Act. Where a law is commonly referred to by its name, or where the name of an act would be helpful to you in your citation, you should use it as the first part of your full cite to the statute. The second component is the title number. The United States Code is organized across many broad subjects, with each subject having its own title number. For example, laws related to education are in Title 20. There are currently 54 titles in the United States Code. Third, after your title number, you need to provide the abbreviation for the federal code compilation that you're citing to. The United States Code is the official federal code, and it is abbreviated U.CS.C. Other code compilations, the United States Code Annotated and United States Code Service, have different abbreviations. You can find their abbreviations in T1. They're unofficial, and we'll be talking about them a little bit later. The fourth component of your cite is going to be the section symbol, followed by a space, followed by the actual section number of the code. The fifth component is the date and publisher parenthetical. As of the 21st edition of the Bluebook, dates are now optional in this parenthetical. But even if you choose to not include the date, you must still include the publisher information when using an unofficial code. Let's take a look at a sample cite for the Indian Child Welfare Act. The first portion of our cite is going to be the name. We're going to do this because it's a well-known name and because I think it's important for my reader to know the name of the act in this particular circumstance. So I'm going to start with that official name. Note that the name is not italicized or underlined or enhanced in any way. After the end of my name, I'm going to place a comma. The next piece of my cite will be the title number and code abbreviation. The Indian Child Welfare Act is contained in Title 25, which is the title that deals with Indians. I'm using the United States Code Annotated, so I'm going to use the abbreviation USCA. Remember, I said this is an unofficial code, so it's going to add to our cite. The next piece of my cite is the section component. Here I'm citing to the entire Indian Child Welfare Act, which takes up many sections. Because I'm citing to multiple sections, I will use the plural form of section, which is a double section symbol. After my double section symbols, I'm going to put in my space, and I'm going to put in the span of sections that I'm referencing. The last component of my cite is the publisher and date parenthetical. I'm not going to include the date because it's not particularly important in this case, but because I'm using the USCA, I need to include publisher information. T1 will tell you whether you need publisher information in your parenthetical, and if so, what publisher you should be noting. I can see here that the United States Code Annotated requires me to use West in my parenthetical. It also reminds me that the year can be included if desired. Let's take a look at how to compose a cite when looking at the code in print, or here, looking at the United States Code as it appears at govinfo.gov. GovInfo website contains an exact printing of the United States Code. This means that you can cite this internet source exactly the same way you would cite the print version. Here you can see portions of 2 sections of the Indian Child Welfare Act. Let's assume that our new cite is going to focus on Section 1911 and specifically the subsection dealing with exclusive jurisdiction of tribes in these proceedings. I can find my title number up here, labeled Title. I know that I'm looking at the official United States Code, so I'll use USC as my code abbreviation. Sections in the print are indicated with the section symbol, and when I want to indicate a more precise subsection, I simply add that in the same way it's indicated in the code. Here, exclusive jurisdiction is in subsection A, So I'll just add an open parens A closed parens right after my 1911. Note the spacing here. There should be a space between the section symbol and the section number, but there's no space between the section number and subsection pieces. Keep in mind that we don't include other designations such as chapter or subchapter in our cites. You can ignore those designations in federal statutory cites. Now imagine I thought the date was important to my cite here. So what date would I use? We generally don't use the date of enactment in general statutory cites. Instead, we're going to look at the spine of the book. If we can't find it there, then we're going to look at the title page at the beginning of the book. If I can't find it there, I'm going to go to the copyright page. And if the provision I'm citing isn't in the main text, but instead in a pocket part or supplement, I'll check the date on the front of that supplement. We'll talk a little bit more about pocket parts and supplements in a few minutes. In the case of the United States Code, it is published every 6 years. The code I was using just a moment ago was published in 2018, and the statute hasn't been updated since then, so my date for my parenthetical will be 2018. Putting it all together, here's my cite to that particular piece of the Indian Child Welfare Act using the official United States Code. A few moments ago, I referred to our unofficial codes. Let's return to that for a moment. The unofficial codes are published by other companies. While not official, they are generally very reliable sources. But because they're not official, they are not preferred by the Bluebook. Nevertheless, you can still cite to them when you need to. Unofficial codes are generally annotated, which means that they contain additional research resources and tools that you might find very helpful when trying to research a particular statutory issue. They'll contain many digests of cases, and all these cases are those that have interpreted the statute that you're reading. They may also contain cites and references to other helpful secondary sources. The two main unofficial codes for federal statutes are the United States Code Annotated, USCA, and the United States Code Service, USCS. You can see their abbreviations here as well as in T1. As noted earlier, when citing to these unofficial codes, you do not need to include a date in the parenthetical, but you do need to include the publisher parenthetical. Again, you can find this publisher information by looking up your specific unofficial code in T1. If we had used the United States Code Annotated to produce our cite to Section 1911 of the Indian Child Welfare Act, our cite might have looked like this. Publishing books is expensive, and legislatures are constantly enacting new laws, and our statutes are evolving and changing with every bill. Publishers don't produce a whole new book each time a law changes. It would be near impossible to keep up and fiscally irresponsible. As I said just a few moments ago, the United States Code is published only every 6 years. So where do new laws go between publications, and where can we find them? Well, they're published in things called pocket parts or supplemental volumes. When working with print statutes, the material that you want to cite may not appear in the main volume of the statutes. Instead, it may appear in one of these supplemental type materials. This is how you let your reader know where to find that material in a supplement in print. If your citing material contained only in the supplement or pocket part, you will simply add SUPP period between the publisher and the year of the supplement or pocket part. If, on the other hand, your citing material that appeared in both the main volume and the supplement include the date for the main volume after the publisher and the supplement information, you're going to separate both of these pieces with an ampersand, as you can see here. Like cases, statutes also have short citation forms. You can find a handy table of these forms in Rule 12.10 as highlighted here. You can also find a short form table for federal cites at B12.2 in the blue pages. Let's work through a problem. Assume that the long form of our cite is 18 USC Section 3. After we've cited our statute in full, our short forms could include any of the following. It might be a simple id if we're once again referring to Section 3 and no other sources have been cited since our last cite to Section 3. Nice and easy. If we change sections, but our last cite was still to a section in the same title, here, Title 18, we could use this type of id form. Note that unlike cases, there's no at following the id, just the section symbol. And again, make sure you put that spacing before and after your section symbol. If we've already cited to Title 18 earlier in our general discussion, and we haven't cited to another title of the U.S. Code or some other statutory scheme, my short form could be as simple as this Section 4. Do you see how this form is even shorter than my last id form? Because this one is so short and simple, I tend to default to use this format rather than the id format illustrated above. If you've cited Title 18 before, but cited another statute or title since your last Title 18 cite, you'll need to repeat your title and code name before putting in Section 4. Remember that the key to citation is providing your reader with necessary information about where to find sources, but at the same time you want to be as unobtrusive as possible. Therefore, you should use your discretion when choosing amongst these short forms. There's a lot more leeway here than there is in cases. It sometimes might be a good idea to provide more information than you strictly need to, if doing so is going to make it easier for your reader to understand where your source is. At the same time, while an id form might be okay, might be acceptable, it might be easier to use just the section and section number short form that you can see here as well. You've now completed the lesson on citing federal statutes. But of course, there's more. Before attempting your statutory citation homework, go and watch the next lesson, Citing State Statutes. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me or your TA.